Hi, Dawn Levine here, and today we're going to talk about trains in Italy. I just finished a 3-week trip to Italy and Greece, and while we were in Italy, we went all over the place. We went to southern Italy, we went all the way up to the Alps, so we were everywhere. And we relied almost exclusively on the trains. It was very, very helpful not to have to deal with a car. So why? Why was train trip travel helpful for us? So we went to, first of all, the trains go everywhere. Even the little towns will often have access to a train. So we went to mostly major cities, and there was a well established, easy to access train station almost everywhere we went. A lot of places where we were staying were in the historic parts of the towns, and a lot of those places have become pedestrian only. So if you rent a car, you can't necessarily take it to where you're staying. So that is an important consideration. The other issue for us, we wanted to be very mobile, and we didn't want to have to negotiate how to get here and there. The train travel is often you don't have to deal with the traffic, number one. So it can be a lot faster than dealing with a car. And it was just one less headache that we had to deal with. Plus, the drivers there are just nuts. I would not have wanted to have to deal with that. The train system in Italy is very easy to use. They have an app that you put on your phone, and you can pull up. You don't have to buy your tickets in advance. We only bought one set of tickets in advance before we went to Europe. And that was just the very first train trip. After that, we realized very quickly it's better to not try to catch a particular train, because that gave us freedom. Okay, well, we want to spend a little more time here, and we're going to go catch the train a little later. We could just, figure out, okay, we want to go in 2 hours instead of just in 1 hour, and here are the trains that are available. So the app is very easy to use. On the app, you can tell how many trains are going to your particular destination, and of those trains, how many stops do they have, how many transfers. So for some destinations, you might have to get off of one train and get onto another. We preferred the trips without any train changes, because that part can be a little bit stressful, but sometimes that was inevitable. But it gives you a lot of options on the app. You can also check between trains where they allow you to pick your seat and trains where you're not allowed to pick your seat. That may be a big deal for you as well. So we liked the trains where we could pick our seat, so the four of us could sit together. So that was very, very helpful. You can also see on the app in real time, this train is on time. This train is going to be delayed by 5 minutes. And then they also will, I think, if I'm not mistaken, on the app, they also tell you which platform. So that brings me back around to train transfers. So sometimes, based on where you're going from and to, you might need to get off of a train and get onto a different train. You take this train north, and then you get on this other train that's going to the east or the west. Sometimes that's necessary, but it can be stressful, because you have to get off the train and figure out which platform the next train is on, and then get to that platform in time to catch the other train. Sometimes those connections are very, very tight, so that can be stressful. But like I said, on the app, you can usually tell where that platform is going to be. It can still be stressful, even if you know which platform you're looking for, because you've never been to this train station before, perhaps. And so you may not know your way around, but they have very good signage in the train stations. So it's relatively easy to find the platform that you're looking for. Some things to be aware of when traveling with the trains. Now, I'm going to give you some of the cons, But I will tell you, even with all the cons that we encountered, I would totally do it again. It was so much easier than trying to deal with parking and what does this traffic sign say and which way are we supposed to be going, and finding gas stations and all of that. I'm not interested in that. So the trains, even with the negative parts of it, I would totally do train travel again, as long as I could get where I was going via train. So some of the cons. It can be a little confusing. So you have to try to figure out, where is the board that shows me where the trains are arriving? Is this one on time? Is it late? Is this one canceled? So that can be a little bit stressful because the train stations have a lot of similarities, but there's variation. So how this one looks and how the platforms are arranged is going to be very different than that one over there. The big train stations in the major cities are the easiest to navigate. The smaller ones are a little less intuitive, but there's less to explore. So that makes it a little easier. I guess it all evens out. Some of the people who work in the train stations are not very helpful. Most of the people that we encountered spoke fluent English, but sometimes they just seemed a little obtuse on purpose. There was one particular circumstance where we knew that there were 2 trains going to the destination that we were trying to get to, and I was trying to ask the lady who was working in the train station, does this train go to such and such? Because there was no signage. The sign on the side of the train was not on. I couldn't tell where this particular train was going. There had been some changing of which platform things were supposed to be on. And she, instead of answering the question, my question was, does this train go to so-and-so? She said, you'd be better off getting on that train over there that goes to so-and-so. No, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if this train goes to so-and-so. And she just repeated exactly the same thing again. And I asked her the question one more time, and she repeated exactly the same answer and then said, do you understand me? And I said, do you understand me? And then I realized this is not going to go any better than it's going right now. We're just going to hop on this train and hope for the best. So we hopped on the train, and it did go to the city we were looking for, except that instead of taking an hour and a half, this train was going to take 3 hours. And she could have just said, this one does go to so-and-so, but it's the slow one. You don't want that one. And instead, she just kept answering the question that I didn't ask, which was very frustrating. So there's that. Sometimes the people who work there are not very friendly and not very helpful. I'm convinced that she knew what I was asking. She just didn't want to answer it the way I wanted her to answer it. So that's a minor inconvenience, not a big deal. The biggest inconvenience may never happen to you, but happen to us. So the trains will sometimes go on strike. When they go on strike, it's not the whole train system. They'll just have one little area that goes on strike. Well, lo and behold, that's where we happened to be the day that the strike hit. So we were up in the Alps in a tiny little town called Bolzano, and the trains went on strike. And so because we were up in the Alps in a tiny station, there weren't a lot of options for getting out of there into our next destination. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm. It's a small town, which meant there were limited options. Our next destination was far away. It was one of the longest legs of our journey. The hotel on the other end was prepaid in advance. It was the only hotel the whole trip that was prepaid in advance. And it was the most expensive hotel for the entire trip. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm of the details. We didn't have any real choice but to try to get to our next destination, because after the next city we were to hop on our flight, we had to be on that side of Italy. So we had to get to that side of Italy. And so because we had spent so much on this hotel that we were trying to get to, and we all really wanted to see it, we had to make some decisions about how we were going to get where we needed to go. So we checked in with, you just have to be prepared to think on your feet in all regards, even if it's a completely different kind of crisis that comes up. You just got to be prepared to think on your feet. So our first thought was, okay, a rental car. So we went to a rental car agency and they didn't open. And so we left there and we went to a different car rental agency, and he said, oh no, you can't rent a car here and leave it there. If you rent a car here, you have to bring it back here. We're like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So we could not rent a car to get to our destination. So we went back to our hotel, and God bless this woman. The woman who worked at the hotel she just went straight to work for us to help us find a way to get to our next destination. So if you go to Bolzano, stay in Hotel Fiker. They are the best. Love, love, love them. But she went to work immediately to find us a private driver. And I think we got the last private driver in the entire city. And so we had a private driver drive us all the way across Italy to get to our next destination because we had to get there. It was very, very expensive, but not as expensive as losing the hotel reservation would have been. So we got to our gorgeous, gorgeous hotel, and we had a scenic drive, and we got there. And then the trains worked fine the rest of the trip. The strikes don't normally last long. It's usually just a couple of days. But we only stayed 2 days in every city, so we didn't have 2 days to spare. So if you were in a big city and there was a train strike, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. If you, so just be aware, when there's going to be a strike, they usually announce it in advance. And God bless us, I had actually seen something about the train strike, and the dots just did not connect in my mind. I saw the city, I saw the mention of the strike, and I didn't look at the dates to see that's when we're there. Otherwise, maybe we could have planned something different in advance. But like I said, they usually announce the strikes in advance. So if you just stay aware of things, that will not be a problem for you. You just have to shift and do a little something different if you know that a strike is coming while you're there. I have heard people say that if you encounter a strike, your general instructions are just get on a train that's going in the general direction that you're going and just work your way there. That probably works in a lot of places. It didn't work in Bolzano because Bolzano is a little bit off the beaten path. It's a small town. It's up in the Alps. It's really towards the border. So that was not going to work there. There were no trains. Zero. The trains that were coming into the station, they were making people get off. So just be aware if you're going to a small town, maybe you want a rental car for that. I know that there are probably rental car companies where you can rent in one place and drop off somewhere else. They just didn't have any in that particular town. If we'd driven there, we probably would have been fine. So even with all of that drama, it gave us an interesting story to tell, and it was quite the experience. And we laughed the whole time. It was just hysterical. But I would still take the train again. It was so much easier than dealing with a car in the big cities with the crazy Italian drivers. So definitely would do it again, even with all of those negative possibilities. And I will tell you, I will pay a lot more attention to any notice of a strike from here on out. So I hope you found this helpful, and don't be afraid to take the train. It's a pretty easy thing to do. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. Okay, so there's one other thing you need to know about the trains. When you get a ticket, there's a couple of different kinds. You could end up, if you do it on your app, you've got a ticket on your phone, and I think that that's fine. If you get a ticket at one of the kiosks, it's a paper ticket. There's two different types. There's, and I am not an expert on this, so definitely ask if you have questions. But there's one that's got a QR code on it, and then there's a different kind that does not have a QR code. And some of the stations have a machine where you have to validate that ticket. If it's one of those, you'll see one of those machines on the platform. We only saw one the entire time we were there, and we went to I think it was like 8 different cities. We only saw one. We only had one ticket that was that type. Most of them have that QR code, and there's a guy that just wanders around the train, and he's got a little reader, and he'll read your ticket. But if you've got one of those kind that has to be stamped in the machine, if you get on the train without stamping that ticket, they're going to assume that you were trying to pull a fast one. So just be aware of that. There can be a penalty for not validating that type of ticket. And again, that's the type that does not have the QR code on it. I think the ones with the QR code, you don't do them that way. So just pay attention to what you're doing and what kind of ticket you've got. And if you have any questions about, does this ticket need to be validated before I get on the train, ask someone standing there in the station. The bigger stations in the major cities, there's almost always a person standing near the machine where you buy the tickets to answer questions and to help you. The more crowded it is, the more people are going to be standing around to help you. And I think they put the nicest people next to the kiosks. So you probably won't have that experience like that lady who wouldn't answer my questions. The people standing next to the ticket kiosks are helpful. So hope you found this helpful. And if you did, hit the subscribe, hit the like, and look for our next episode where we'll talk about something else you need to know before you go to Italy. I look forward to seeing you soon. Ciao.